All right, good evening, everyone. I want to get started. Be respectful of your time. Thanks for joining us this evening. For those of you I have not met yet, my name is John Young. I'm the Director of Counseling here, and you're going to hear from myself and two of my colleagues. So we're glad you're with us this evening. Let me start by saying thank you. For those of you who don't know, I just finished my first year here at McQuaid, and it's been a fantastic experience. So for all of you who've welcomed me into the family, thank you again. And thank your sons for putting up with us. We've been yakking at them for a long time, but it's an honor and a privilege to work with them all. Tonight you'll hear from me and my colleagues, Mr. Jeff Griffa and Mrs. Anne Marie Galetto. Collectively, we figured out that we have over 80 years of college admissions experience, which is a little scary. But for those of you we divide things up alphabetically. So I get to work with all of your sons who have the last name Allen through McDonough, and then Mr. Griffa gets to work with everybody whose last name is Meck through Zimmerman. Meck through Zimmerman. That's who you have, right, Jeff? I just want to quickly review where we've been so far with your students and what's been going on in terms of our programming. It really began back in December of last year when we had our virtual College Information Week. We had many different guests come and speak. We recorded some Zoom sessions. We put them all out on YouTube, encouraged juniors, and many of you may have signed in to watch some of those on topics like writing the college essay and crafting a college list and financial aid. In January, we hosted a parent night for junior parents, so many of you may have come to that. And then, next step was for your sons to meet with Mr. Griffa or myself to plan their senior schedules. We had individual meetings with each one of them in February. Then, in March and April, Mr. Griffa and I led college planning seminars for all the juniors. We met with them 4 times in small groups. We talked about just about everything there is to talk about in this process, but we recognize that they might not remember all of that from the time we talked to them in March and April to now. So we held some summer seminars the week before school started on writing the essay and maximizing your activity list, along with the Common Application and linking your Common Application to Naviance. This week, we met with seniors just yesterday here to kick off the year and showed them how to register for representatives who come from college when they visit McQuaid, how to register for those visits, and how to request transcripts and recommendations. So we've done a lot. There's more to come, but we look forward pretty much now from working with your students individually. And that's, if there's something that I want you all to leave with this evening, it's that Mrs. Galetto, Mr. Griffa, and myself are here to meet with your sons when they need it. And we'll drive them, we'll grab them, we'll start talking to them. But if they ever have a question, even if it's just a small one, they should come in and talk to us, because we'd rather give them the right information and get things moving along than them relying on what Johnny or Susie said from 2 years ago. Let me start things off by talking a little bit about trends in college admissions. I don't know how you shake yourself out as a crowd. Are you the pessimist or the optimist? Do you want the good news or the bad news first? Bad news. All right, great. We'll start with the bad news. What we're seeing is that during COVID, many colleges increased their acceptance rate. They were worried about filling their classes. So there was a COVID effect in the admissions process where a lot of students were getting admitted to colleges at a higher rate. That has started to level off now. So when you look at guides from 3 years ago, that data is a little old now. You really got to pay attention to current data because things have changed a lot. They've kind of gotten back to normal over the last 3 years. We're also seeing that the test optional policy that a lot of schools have taken on, a lot of colleges and universities have taken on, are driving their applicant counts way up because they don't need to submit test scores. Students are applying to more schools. But we're also seeing that those students who chose to admit test scores are getting admitted at a higher rate. So I think it makes sense for students to apply to a range of schools, but it's probably smart to include some schools where your test scores are right in the middle of those 50% bands of what colleges are looking for. As always, it seems like the news will publicize this, but I think it's true. The top schools are getting harder and harder to get into. Their acceptance rates are dropping every year, and there's always a news story about it in the spring, and when we get the data on the year, it is certainly shown to be true. We're also seeing fewer students, and maybe this is good news, I'm not sure, being put on the wait list. Colleges are getting better at predicting their yield again. So there are fewer students on wait lists. Last year, we didn't have much wait list activity at all. Not many students stayed on wait lists. They didn't feel like it. They made their decision. They stuck with it. There was very little wait list movement. So there's the bad news. Let me move to the good news now, because I think this is more fun. Nationally, students were admitted to 68% of the schools to which they applied last year. That's good news overall. Because yield was harder to predict for so long, I think some colleges are still over-admitting a little bit, which means there's some crowded classes, but your sons are getting into some places. There's also some negotiating power for all of you when it comes to financial aid. There's been better financial aid packages put out to our students. We're seeing that, and you've got some more negotiating power. I think this is good news. Some people may not see it as good news, but I think it's good news. Senior grades seem to be having a greater impact on the decisions that are being made. So I see that as an opportunity for your sons to have a great senior fall this first quarter. Those grades will go out to all colleges first semester as well if they haven't gone early decision and wrapped things up. So those first 2 quarters, I think, are a fantastic opportunity for your sons to showcase their talents and skills. Early decision continues to offer a leg up in the admissions process. So for your sons who have gone through searches and have a sense of what their first choice school is, I consider applying early decision. We're seeing some big differences in acceptance rates from early decision students to regular or early action students. Sometimes early action is offering an increased acceptance rate, but not very often. Early decision definitely is. Demonstrated interest is playing a bigger role in the decisions that colleges are making. And we're seeing it in particular with some specific schools, and we can talk to your sons about them as they go through this process. But the fact that they have visited a school or are interacting with the admissions officer who comes and visits McQuaid is playing a role in the decision. We're hearing very clearly from some of our admissions colleagues on the other side of the desk that here's a student who is admissible to the institution, but they didn't show any interest. We're choosing someone who did show interest over that student. Our students have control over that, and it's one of the benefits, I think, of going to a school like McQuaid is that we're encouraging these students to get in front of admissions officers. We're providing them the opportunity to do that. So make sure that if your sons are serious about an institution, and we talked to them about this in the spring, but I want to reiterate it with all of you, if they're interested in an institution, the very first thing they should do is go out to their website and register for their mailing list. I'm amazed at the number of students who are skipping over that. They're going to the website, they're looking up all the data they want to see, they're doing the virtual visit. Colleges have no idea that you did that until you go and log in and give them your name so that they can market to you and send you those emails and brochures and all those things. But that's the first way to demonstrate interest. I think it's critical. When I worked on the college side of admissions, which I did for 30 plus years, we had a name for students who applied out of nowhere. We called them stealth applicants. And they might have been students that have visited our campus, saw a friend, but they never came through admissions. They never interacted with the admissions staff. They did a bunch of research on their own. We didn't accept very many of those students because we didn't think our likelihood of yielding them was very high. So let me make sure you encourage your sons to go online and register for those schools, even though they may have already looked at all the videos and seen everything they need to see. Make sure you give them their names. Actually, let me turn things over to Mrs. Galetto. If she can talk a little bit about the College Advisement Center and what we do from there. I'll trade spots with you. You can.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Good. So my name is Anne-Marie Galetto. I'm the one that you get all of the emails from on Naviance. Yay. Yeah. So what I'd like to say is welcome. Your boys, you have wonderful sons. They are all right where they need to be, so I don't want you to worry thinking that they haven't started yet, they're not where they're supposed to be. They are. They're coming into the College Advisement Center on a regular basis. They're visiting with John and Jeff. They're asking lots and lots of questions. That might surprise some of you, but they are really doing it. They're really, really doing it. So College Advisement Center. College Advisement Center is across from the Counseling Center. It is an area for you as senior parents, families, and the boys to come in and research their colleges. They can come and hang out. It's very nice up there. It's air conditioned, it's very nice. This is where all of the colleges will come and visit the students. You have a list I gave you of all the colleges that are coming in. Those are basically, that's a temporary list, an initial list. It changes daily. So if you want to hop on Naviance, I'm going to show you how to look as parents. Well, Jeff's going to click. I'm going to show you how the boys register. They get on their Naviance page, and you have access to this too. So they're going to log on to their Naviance page. They're going to go to, they can do college visits there. If you look, our first college is St. Lawrence. They'll be here Monday at 1 o'clock. If your student is interested in St. Lawrence, they go to the right. They click Request Visit. That comes right to me. I write them a pass. They come up and see the college. They go back to class. College visits last anywhere from half an hour to 40, they're scheduled for 45 minutes. But they can last anywhere from half an hour to an hour. It depends on how many students show up. It depends on what kinds of questions they have. When Notre Dame comes, and they'll be here, I believe, on the 18th or something like that, my room will be packed for that visit. And that's going to go over an hour. So the students and the teachers all know that if the boys have a test or a quiz, they should not come to my room for a visit. However, they should come up and just say, I'm sorry, I have a test. It's making that connection. It's making that demonstrated interest for that student. So these are all of the visits. The kids can sign up for as many visits as they like. They need to come up and see the reps. Someone asked a very good question earlier. I see that BC's coming twice. That's because I have 2 college fairs coming this year. If the visit is in Keenan Hall, that is a college fair, and the student should see the college that's going to be in the College Advisement Center. What else do I have? Yeah, so schedule, if the kids have conflicts, they can come anytime they want. They can come up and see the rep. And again, it's just a resource center for anybody that wants to come in and visit. And if you have any questions, please call me. That's what I'm here for. Okay? Thank you.
Is there a list on the parent side as well?
Yes.
You can see both. Both students and parents can see that at any time. I want to talk a little bit about the college search process and some questions I've received from parents and students about certain data points that people are using as they go through this process, and explain what they mean and what role they might want to play in how you're evaluating colleges. The one that students ask me about the most and they talk about the most is the acceptance rate. If the acceptance rate is low, that college must be really good. If the acceptance rate is high, maybe that college isn't so good. I would encourage you not to use that metric. I don't think that's very important. There are some phenomenal schools that have relatively high acceptance rates because their admissions pool is really strong, and they're going to accept a high percentage of those students. There's plenty of schools that have really low acceptance rates. It doesn't mean they're great. It just means they have a ton of applicants, and they've got to make some tough choices. There's another data point that I think is useful for you all, and it's called the yield rate. What percentage of the students who were admitted chose to enroll? To me, most selective colleges have yield rates between 25 and 35%. So they're making 4 offers for every student that comes. There are very few colleges that have yield rates above 50%. There just aren't many of them, but I bet you can guess which ones they are because we talk about them all the time. 2 more data points that I think are really useful for families. One is called the retention rate. What percentage of the first-year class returns for their sophomore year? That's telling you a lot about the happiness of the students with their choice, about their ability to get the classes that they need to keep moving on, about the appropriateness of the fit. Did the admissions office do a good job? Admit those students who are going to be successful at the institution and they're going to stick with it. And the last data point that I would encourage you to look at is graduation rate. Be careful when you look at that data point. The federal government requires colleges to report on their 6-year graduation rate. Not 4 years, 6 years. Last I checked, there aren't many of you who want your child there for 6 years. So ask about what their 4-year graduation rate is. Are they getting the classes that they need? Are they getting in and out? Are they leaving? Now, it's nice when that 5 and 6 year graduation rate creeps up a little bit, because it means they're going to stick with those students and serve them and make sure they get a degree. But if they don't have a very high percentage of students graduating in 4 years, that might be giving you an indication that they're not getting the classes that they need, that they're not getting the advising that they need. Does that all make sense to everybody? I think those are some data points that not many people look at. They're quick to look at acceptance rate and judge schools by that data point, where I think obviously retention, graduation rate can be a little bit better judge of what the college experience is going to be like for your sons. Mr. Griffa, you're up.
I have a question.
Yes.
So that 6-year retention rate, though, does that include, like, where you can go for your master's?
No, that's purely undergraduate, getting in and out for your undergraduate degree. So yeah, there's a lot of schools that have joint programs where you could stay. That would not be part of that calculation. So that's one of the nice things about it, is it's purely undergraduate. It's not measuring any other programs. Great question.
All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry about the mask, but I got healthy from COVID in just enough time to come out here tonight. So I'm glad to be here. I'm also really glad to continue my work with all of you and your students. I want to take some time to talk about the college application process that we use in terms of how to request transcripts and letters of recommendation, and I'm going to give you a quick demonstration here on how to use Naviance. And this is what your students are going to be doing, and we help them out. I don't expect, we did a demo, well, those two did a demonstration on Tuesday while I was out. And so we don't expect everyone to remember how to do this, but we just want to show you, in case you do remember, but also because it's fairly simple. And for us, for me in particular, I've been doing this, and Anne-Marie has been doing this for 20 plus years. John has been working on the other side of the aisle for a while. For us, it's easy. It's like an everyday occurrence, but I don't say that to students, because I understand that they've never been through this process. I also understand that many of you have not been through this process either. So we do encourage you to ask questions. We always encourage the students to ask questions as well. Last thing we want them to do is to guess on how to do things or listen to their friends for advice, because that's what their college wanted. Every college is going to be different for the most part. So please, let us know what you need. If you have questions, let us know. If you're feeling nervous, let us know. Don't let that grow into feeling overwhelmed, because if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, it's probably going to be a little hairier to get you out of that situation. So anyway, what I'd like you to do is go to the Appendix A in your book. You can essentially kind of follow along. When you get to the Appendix A, we did numbers 1, 2, 3 in our college application seminar. If you don't have a book, sorry folks, if you don't have a book, we're going to make them available. We never really sell out of books here during this Parent Night, so we underestimated how many of you people were interested in coming. But we're going to have some electronic copies available, and we're going to send them out to you either via Naviance or in a McQuaid newsletter.
Or Jeff, their sons can pick them up in the office
Yeah,
too.
that too. So we have extras. So your son can pick them up. We'll also make them available online for you to have access, okay? But essentially what I want you guys to know, and we tell the students this, when they submit their common application or their school-specific application, even though they've written their essay, they've completed their activities list, they've filled in all the blanks, and they hit submit, that application is not yet complete. The application will be complete when the college receives all the necessary supporting documentation as well. And that will include the transcript, letters of recommendation, specific forms, a school profile, and maybe something else depending on the college, okay? The submission of those two sections is not going to be at the same time either, okay? So if a student has a deadline on December 1st, he has all the way up until December 1st, 11:59. Please, God, don't do that. But they have all that time to hit submit for their application. application, all right? 10 school days before that, at least 10 school days before that, we want the students to go through this transcript request process, which essentially starts our timeline for writing the recommendation letter. In addition to that, we'd also like to have the student brag sheet and the parent brag sheet so that we can write that recommendation letter within those 10 days, okay? So we would like to have the brag sheets submitted to us before the students do the transcript request, okay? So this is how you do the transcript request. So in Naviance, students need to go to colleges I'm thinking about, and they have to make sure that the college that they want to apply to is listed in colleges I'm thinking about. A lot of times, the college is already going to be in the other section called colleges I'm applying to because of what we did over the summer, and that was when we matched the Naviance account to the Common Application accounts. When we did that, the colleges that were both sitting in the My College list of Common App and the colleges I'm thinking about list in Naviance were moved over to colleges I'm applying to in Naviance, okay? So there's two ways to do this, okay? If the student does it this way from colleges I'm thinking about, that's what I'm gonna show you. There's a little nuance here. So essentially what you have to do is you choose your college, and then you go up to Move to Application List. And from there, you choose whichever deadline that you're going to apply. Now, if you're doing it from colleges I'm applying to, you will not have this option to choose the deadline. And there's two ways to populate the deadlines in Naviance. An easy way is just to come up to the guidance office or to see Ms. Galetto in the College Advisement Center and say, hey, can you help me put my college deadline into colleges I'm applying to? And we can populate it from our end of Naviance. The other way to do it is to go into the Common Application, go to that specific My College questions area, and then fill in what deadline you're going to use to apply. And that will push the information into Naviance. Okay? Again, I don't expect you to remember that. Please don't worry about it. If you don't see a deadline, send your student up to see us or give us a call and we can populate that deadline. Okay? So once the student chooses the deadline, they just make this selection of if they're using the Common Application or if they're using a college-specific application. There are other applications out there as well. Sometimes colleges are Common App members. They have a school-specific application, and they might be a member of another application group. It doesn't matter what they're doing. All they need to do is let us know what application they're using so that we can send the supporting documents successfully. Because if they say they're using the Common Application, but they apply directly to the institution using their school-specific app, we can send it, but the college won't see it. All right, so that's really important that we have that open line of communication. Once they make that selection, they can choose whether or not they are going to send their SAT scores or ACT scores to that college, which, by the way, we told the students this in the Common Application seminar. A lot of colleges moved away from requiring official score reports to be sent during the application review during the pandemic. Some schools have moved back to requiring the official score reports for the application review, all right? So an easy way to find that information, how they're going to be doing it, is to use the Common Application. So from the Common Application, when you go to the My College list, you have a ton of information. And if you haven't visited the Common Application, I tell students this all the time, this is a great source of information. It's like a single point of agencies. If I just take a look at St. Bonaventure University, look at all this information I have about them. All their regular deadlines, all their specific like dual degree program deadlines, other application information you'll need to know, which includes how many recommendation letters they require and how many they'll take. But you can also see, to my point, the test policy information. And when you click this, it takes you directly to the college's website where you'll find out, okay, this college does or does not require an official test score from the testing agency, okay? We don't want students' application review to be held up because the school is waiting for test scores. Those colleges that don't require official test scores, and if a student wants them to be reviewed, they can self-report the test scores in the Common Application. And doing so, the student will be able to superscore those test results. So they'll be able to put their highest math, their highest verbal scores, or if they're taking the ACT, they can do their super scores, their ACT scores as well. For a lot of those colleges, pretty much all of those colleges, if I self-report and I get accepted and I decide to go to that college, they will probably require the official score report from the testing agency upon enrollment so that they can verify what I reported in my Common Application. All right, so that's an important detail to know.
Can I just ask you one question? So the College Board information is not linked up with the Common App? You
No.
have to self-report it and then send it directly to the school?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. You can also self-report AP scores as well. So there's, in the testing section of the Common Application, you'll see all the different options that you have. Yes?
If our sons want to do early decision, which in some schools I think is as early as October 15th, and that's before their SAT scores, the SAT test, how does that work?
So if I say I'm going to report my scores, and I say I'm going to report my SAT scores, and I hit continue, one of the questions they're going to ask is how many past SAT scores do I wish to report, and how many future SAT sittings I expect. In addition to that, though, if you're applying early decision or early action, many of those colleges will say, this is the date this is the last testing date that we'll accept scores from. So you got to make sure that if you have a future test date, that it falls within that range for them to be able to accept it. And that information can be found in that test policy link that I showed you earlier. Okay.
Can you tell us the difference between early decision and early action? I always confuse them.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to cover it later, but I'll tell you right now. So what I tell the students is early decision, the easy way to remember it is like you've made the decision early that you want to go to that college if you get accepted. The early action, you can apply early, and you can apply to several colleges early. You get your decisions early, but you can have all your applications in action because you don't have to decide until the May 1st decision date. Early decision, you can only apply to one college because you can only commit yourself to one college. And so you have to sign a contract, the student signs a contract. We counselors also sign that contract that says, hey, if you get accepted, you're gonna go there. So it really makes a lot of sense. Even though it can give you a leg up in admissions, you have to make sure that that's a good fit, socially, spiritually, professionally, financially. And finances are probably the only, I think, valid reason to get out of an early decision agreement. I've had a student not honor the early decision agreement many years ago, and it wasn't pretty. So we received a letter from that college saying that they wouldn't take future early decision applicants seriously from this school. So it was really disappointing that that happened. So we do take it seriously. You have to fall in love with that school. You have to make sure it's a good fit in all the ways I mentioned before. And if you're worried about, or if you're concerned about whether or not it's going to be a good financial fit, there are tools out there that you can use on college websites. And there are individual sites as well. There's like FAFSA Forecaster. You can also use the net price calculator, which every college website is required to have. And you can put in your information. Sometimes you could even put grades and other accolades and SAT scores, and it'll take tax information as well, and it'll kind of spit back an estimated financial aid package to help you determine whether or not early decision is going to be a good choice. Okay. Okay, so that was the testing piece. So after you get done and you make your choice, and by the way, we will help you guys figure out if you should be sending your scores or not. Okay, we told the students you don't have to make this decision on your own. It can be nerve-wracking, so we'll counsel you through that. So once you figure that out, you hit add and request transcripts, and it's going to be the initial transcript that the students are submitting at this point, and then basically you just make sure that the college that you chose is sitting there, and then you hit request and finished, request and finish, and then you're done. You've requested your transcript. After that, is when you request letters of recommendation. And we're trying something different this year. We've asked all of our students to request letters of recommendation regardless of when their college deadline is. We've asked them to request their letters of recommendation from all their teachers by September 27th. Because in theory, we'd like all the teachers to be able to write their recommendation letters through October and have them be ready by November 1st. And that way, Ms. Galetto doesn't have to chase down teachers, in December, January, because we've submitted all the supporting documentation, we're waiting on rec letters. So we're hoping that this will help the process become more efficient and smoother for everyone, okay? So once you are ready to request your letters of recommendation, and the students have talked to the teachers face-to-face, and they've agreed that, yeah, I'd love to write your recommendation letter. And I tell students, if you approach a teacher and they're like, I don't know, I taught you like 2 years ago, I don't really know you that well, move on. You want somebody who's going to say, I would love to write your recommendation letter. And then if they get that kind of response, then we ask the student to give the teacher a brag sheet as well. Because what we hope the teachers will provide is kind of an encapsulation of that student in the classroom. How do they deal with challenges? How do they deal with, or how do they work through hard assignments? What's their contribution to class discussion? Things of that nature. And then the students can also talk about things that the teachers might not know about how they worked through situations in their class. And that really makes a quality recommendation letter. And in addition to that, Mr. Young and myself are going to be running a workshop next week for teachers so we can give them some more tips on how to write a good recommendation letter for colleges. Okay? All right. So once that, yes?
Just a question about that additional brag sheet I was writing to Mrs. Galetto earlier. So there's a parent one, there's a student one, and then there's a third one, which is the teacher brag sheet?
Yes.
And the teacher fills that out?
The student fills out the information about their experience in their teacher's class. So in a sense, like I told students, it's like you ask a teacher, I don't want you to sit there and say, I hope they write a good letter. Collaborate. Give them some things that you want them to say so that you can kind of plant the seed and have some kind of influence over what they're going to say.
And they submit that to the teacher or to the department?
They give that right to the teacher.
Okay.
Yep, good question, thank you. And we have a bunch of copies right there, and we also have some in the College Advisement Center. Saw your hand up?
I was just going to ask if it was online, but you already answered it.
Good. Okay, so once the students are ready to request their letters through Naviance, they hit this little link down here. They can also do it up here under Apply to Colleges. Well, I don't know why I just did that, but let me go back. So like I said, you can do it at the bottom of the college that I'm applying to page, but you can also go to here under Apply to College and hit, excuse me, Letters of Recommendation. On this page, you just hit Add Request. And so I would like Ms. Galetto to write me a recommendation letter. So I choose her. And then what I can see here are all the requirements, minimum and maximum optional requirements that each of my colleges require. You can also find this information on this Common App section that I showed you earlier. Okay, by clicking here under College Info. You can see recommendation information right here. And so that will match what you see in Naviance, okay? So essentially, when a student, we say, it's good to have about 2 teachers a recommendation. Not always necessary, but it's good. If you have 2 recommendation letters, those teachers are going to write the letter, they're going to upload it into Naviance. So think of it like I've got a recommendation letter bank. So then the teacher or the student will say, okay, Ms. Galetto's rec letter, I want to make sure that goes to Princeton, and Siena Heights. And then I go down here and I just write a quick thank you, well, if I could type, and then I would hit Submit Request. And then, boom, that teacher gets an email, they go write their letter, and they upload it into Naviance. And then Ms. Galetto will submit that recommendation letter either before or after or rarely at the same time, but sometimes at the same time as the transcript and our recommendation letter goes, okay? Students don't need to request a recommendation letter from us. The transcript request is what serves that purpose, okay? And then they can go through and then they can add a second teacher the same way, all right? And this will keep track of what I've done. So it'll say, whichever college I had that sent to previously, it'll say how many I had requested there, okay?
So does a teacher have to get a separate email for every single college they're going to do?
They will, but they'll just ignore it. It's kind of like a professional courtesy. You know, they'll see, oh, my letter's going to all these different colleges. Yeah. Hey.
Speaking of courtesy, the boys should talk to the person in person before they.
That's the very first step. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. When if they get that reaction, you know, yeah, exactly.
First politely ask their permission, and then if they say yes, send them the thing online.
Absolutely. And then afterward, a thank you note is always a great idea. So, yeah.
And then schools will say you need a school counselor or advisor letter. That's the one that will automatically get done by just requesting a transcript?
Yes. Yeah, that's from Mr. Young or myself. Yep. Yeah.
How will the student know that the teacher has written it? Will they be able to read it before requesting?
Only if the teacher shares it with them, but I don't think that, I don't know that that happens. But you can go to,
Can the student request it
this can request,
from their teacher to see the letter?
they can always ask. Yeah, the worst that they're going to hear is no.
Is it in Navia? It's not like that.
Let me,
Yeah.
from my experience, you don't want that to happen. Colleges want that to be anonymous, to be between the college and the faculty members, so that faculty members can be honest and not worry about it. If your student says, I want to see this before it was sent, the colleges may not treat it the same way as if it were sent anonymously.
Is the college notified that they gave them a copy, the students a copy?
There's a what's called a FERPA release click that a student checks, and if they check the box, then we know it came directly from the teacher. If they check no, that means the colleges know that maybe this teacher or student saw it before it came to us.
Yeah. Yeah, the FERPA that he's talking about is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So if a college keeps all the supporting documentation from a college and I enroll at that college, I have the right to go to that admissions office and take a look through all my application files, which would include the recommendation letter. That's if the college keeps it. And so what pretty much all of our students do, and it's standard procedure, is they waive the right to do that. And that's something that we discussed during our common application seminars during the summer, and we explained this law to the students. And I said, I know it sounds weird to give up your rights, but this is the process. And I tried to reassure them by talking about, you have influence on what the teachers write with the brag sheets, and also our job is to advocate for students to get accepted for college. Our job is not to spike their application by saying they're not ready. So we want to provide a good quality letter of recommendation with good details so the college knows what they're in for in a good way from that particular student. So
you're waiving your rights to review everything before it goes to the college? Is that?
yes. Yep.
I'm sorry, I don't understand how that can be positive for the student. Because what I'm perceiving is that if they would want to hide, like if you're saying they're reading it, how do I articulate this? If they're being able to, the student's able to see it, then they know that they're speaking highly of them, right? But if they're not able to see that, then yeah, go ahead.
The colleges believe that students have seen it, that teachers might write falsely just positive information, not honest information about students' success or challenges in their classroom.
Gotcha.
And that's why colleges want students to waive those rights, because teachers will then be more willing to say, John had trouble with subjunctive tense in French, but he really spent some time working with me to work through that, to understand it better, and it showed a lot about his work ethic. If that teacher had to show that information to John before they sent it, they may not write that, and they may not get as honest a recommendation.
So it's authentic. That's
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a teacher honestly does not have to write the letter if the student does not waive their right.
Yeah.
They can opt to not
Yep.
write the letter.
And that does happen.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So somebody had mentioned about status, I think. How do you check the status of the submission? So when I request a recommendation letter, I can go to my letters of recommendation section in Naviance, and I can see the history of my requests. And right here, it simply says that I have requested this recommendation letter, or Kent Dorfman has, our fictional student. And then you can see the other the other terminology that they use so you can figure out what that actually means, okay? In addition to that, you can also check on the status of the transcript in our letters of recommendation by looking here in colleges I'm applying to. So under here where it says transcript, you can see that I requested for Adelphi and College of Charleston. Now, when it goes, and it says pending here for office materials, this means this refers to the transcript and the supporting documentation. Under here it says pending. Under here it says initial materials submitted. Now, Penn State's an outlier, so I'm not going to use that, but if I applied to Adelphi University and Ms. Galetto had sent all that supporting documentation, you would see here it would say initial materials submitted. So this is a good way to check on things. I always ask students to check the status of your rec letters, check the status of your transcript, and I want them to ask me, it's like, hey, how's my recommendation letter coming? And they're usually nervous about that, but I'm like, hey, this is good for you to learn about advocacy skills. You might feel nervous about it, but ask me. If I'm saying I just haven't gotten to it yet, I will be totally honest with you, okay? Yes?
I just want to clarify, if say you have a December 1st deadline and they're sending you coming for the app, whatever, for the college, is that December 1st deadline also for things like the transcript, the letter of recommendation, all that kind of stuff? Is that like all the materials have to be in by that date, or they just have to have the application in and then the supporting stuff can show up?
The application always has to be in by that date. Some colleges allow like a grace period for schools like maybe 10 days after that deadline for the supporting documentation to come. We like it to get there at the deadline. There are cases when 2 days before that college deadline, a student says, oh, I just applied, can you send my transcript? I'm like, what? So we have a talk about professional courtesy and everything, and don't get mad at them or anything like that. It's a teachable moment, and then we work through it, and they're not in trouble, but we'll do our best to get things done and taken care of. So again, open lines of communication. We want the students to come see us. We are supportive. We're not punitive, okay? And I know that this is a stressful process for a lot of the students because they've never gone through it. So we always want them to come to us, even if they think they made a mistake. Well, we'll work through it. Okay. Okay, I think I'm ready to move on from that section. And we'll go to how college decisions are made, which is kind of ironic seeing that, my colleague John here has been on the other side of the desk for 30 plus years, but I'm talking about how the colleges make their decision. So once the, yes. What?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's been a long time since I've been through the process. I want to know, is it still beneficial for a student to consider community college before they go to community?
Community colleges are a great opportunity for many students for a variety of reasons. Finances, 2+2 programs, which can also help with finances. Programs where, like, if you want to go into fire safety or something like that, or technical schools, I mean, it's a great option for many students. If you just want to take a couple classes, or if you're still trying to decide what you want to do, it's a great opportunity. So it's about fit, and every student is going to be different. Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity. The SUNY system is great. So, all right. So once the application is submitted, once the transcript and supporting documents are submitted, then colleges are going to think about, okay, do we want to accept these students or not? And every year, colleges are shaping a class. They're trying to build a community of people from a variety of backgrounds, whatever that might be. Okay, they want diversity of thought. They want diversity of backgrounds because that enriches the entire experience for everyone. Okay, so I mean, if you look at, years ago, MIT's admissions page used to talk about mountaineering. If we have a bunch of people who are trying to climb this mountain, we don't want a bunch of Sherpas. We want people who can ice climb. We want Sherpas. We want people that can do something else, because everybody contributes something different to that goal. Okay? So don't take it personally, and it's a hard thing to swallow sometimes, because students really get their heart set on some colleges. And if they don't get accepted, they sometimes think it's an indictment on who they are, and that's not the case. It's a business at the other end. Okay? okay? But they've worked so hard to get to this point. I can understand where they're coming from, where the students are coming from as well. But that's why it's important to really research colleges and understand how they are going to fit into that environment and articulate how they're going to do so through their application, so that the colleges can then take a look at the rec letters, the essays, the rest of the application, and decide if that student is going to be a good fit for what they're trying to do that year, okay? That it can include trying to build up certain majors or pull people from different parts of the country or trying to get that proverbial second chair oboe player. It doesn't matter. And we don't always know what those institutional goals are we never know what those institutional goals are from year to year. So sometimes you can look perfect, like a perfect match on paper, and you still might not get accepted. And some of those reasons we just might not know why, okay? But if you look at pretty much all of the colleges, you're going to find essentially the top 3 factors for students that are considered for students getting accepted is going to be the academic record, meaning the transcript, the grades, what courses you're taking, how difficult are those courses. Your standardized test scores are always going to, well, not always, they're going to be like middle to up closer to the top of the list. Extracurriculars are all going to be important, but you'll see from college to college that there's different priorities among them, okay? So the academic record I mentioned, that's the transcript. I mean, it shows the students' trends in coursework, trends in grades, ups and downs. That's the day-to-day, that's a reflection of the day-to-day work, okay? That shows a massive amount of history that the colleges can use to try to predict future success, okay? That's what they are. A college, I would say that they're in the prediction business. So like I said, they're trying to build this community and bring good people into their campus. Course selection, we want students to appropriately challenge themselves. Take advantage of difficult, challenging courses that are available to them here at school. And not every school is going to be the same. Some high schools only offer a few AP courses. We offer a ton of AP courses. Obviously, we have restrictions on AP courses due to prerequisites, but also due to the number of AP courses that the students are allowed to take each year. So all this information is dictated in our school profile so that the colleges can understand the context from which the student is coming, because every high school is going to be different. But we want students to maximize their academic opportunities here. The standardized test scores, like I said, it's going to be different among colleges, especially now that many colleges are going back to requiring test scores in the wake of the pandemic being ended. So it's important to know what those colleges' policies are and to understand whether or not you should be submitting those scores to the colleges. Extracurricular activities, if a student is involved in high school, the more likely they are to be involved in college, all right? And extracurricular activities doesn't necessarily mean McQuaid sanctioned activities. It can be stuff that students do on their own. It can also be family responsibilities. So I've had students tell me, I don't have 10 activities to fill in on my application. Well, why not? Well, my parents work second shift and I get home and I have to help my brother and sister with homework and dinner and stuff like that. That is huge. So colleges need that information to make those decisions on best fit, all right? Recommendation letters, we talked about that. They're a very important piece of the puzzle. Like I said about the teacher's recommendation letter, that's going to be kind of a picture of who that student is in the classroom. The counselor letters of recommendation, what we strive to do is try to create a picture of the student within the context of their community and high school. Not every college offers interviews, but many of them do. And we offer practice interviews in the counseling office, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for me. Students come in all nervous and jerky, and then all of a sudden they realize how cool and how much they've accomplished by the time we get done. Not every interview is going to be the same format. Typically it's going to, like all the admissions counselors I've talked to say that they hope that those interviews really do turn into more of a back and forth organic conversation. But the reason I do mock interviews like a question and answer thing is because my goal is to help get the information, the important information that student wants to portray in the interview to the front of their mind and help them be less nervous because they've already had a couple dry runs with me or maybe with some of you folks at home too. Okay. Sometimes colleges will say, after you apply, we're going to send you a link to sign up for an interview. We have some colleges who come to McQuaid and they'll set up a schedule with Anne Marie to do maybe 10 to 15 interviews throughout the day. So we have some people come in late October for that as well. So we'll always announce that to the students. You guys will be notified of that as well if the opportunity arises. The personal statement and the supplemental essays. The personal statement is the big college essay. You know, that's really important. That's the opportunity, as you know, for the students to use their own voice, to kind of, you know, move away from all the quantitative data that's in the transcript and the test scores and the activities list, where they can really talk about what matters to them and why, and how that kind of contributes to their personal growth. And that's really important for colleges to kind of get inside the student's head to see about, you know, who they are, and then to further think about whether or not they're going to be a good fit for their college. And level of interest.
Question based on that?
Yeah.
So if my son is going to apply probably to 6 or 7, can he use that same essay, or does he have to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So the college, you're going to write. I mean, some students will write a couple, because like if I submit to one college and I really like this essay, and then all of a sudden I come up with a new idea, I can go back and make edits to my common application. I can make edits to my essay and send it to another college or group of colleges. Yeah, that's a good question. And then there's supplemental essays, which are a little bit different than, well, a lot different than the Common App essay. Let's see if I can find an example here. I'm sure Princeton's got something. You actually have examples of supplemental essays in the appendix in your book there. But a lot of times, not a lot of times, all the time, these questions are specific to the college, okay? So they require the student to be able to research what that college offers and talk about how they see themselves kind of integrating within that community. They always call it like the why us essay. And it doesn't mean like why us, Princeton. It means no, why us? Why should we be together? And that's the opportunity to talk about specific programs, extracurriculars, sports, whatever. We don't want them talking about the location or the size of the school and stuff that's on the glossy brochure. Colleges know all that stuff, but they don't know how you intend to have your college experience on their campus. And that's what the supplemental essays are for. And we will help students. I love helping students with the essays. It's one of my favorite parts, because it's like, it serves two purposes, I think. And I think most people think about it, yeah, that's my path to get into college if I write this personal statement. But I also think it's an opportunity to gain some insight and to learn about themselves more deeply and to experience some personal growth. So it's a really therapeutic tool. I love the essays. Students don't like them so much. But those that really get involved in the process, I think they do get a ton out of it. Okay.
You'll tell them, like, if they have supplemental essays for their schools, they should write them, meet with you, look at it before they copy.
Yep. Students will drop off copies. They'll share Google. They'll email me, whatever. I'll make comments and scan them and send them back, or meet with them individually, or both. So, yep. Yes. Oh.
I just a question. I know every school is probably a little different, but in general, what is the application? Like, the college gets the application. Is it one person looking at it? Is it one person who goes, okay, now it goes to a table of people?
Yeah.
Does it go to like, you're interested in engineering, it goes to the department? Like, do we know?
They're all different. Yeah, some, like, yeah, they're all going to be different. Some will have like an initial reviewer, and then it goes to somebody else. Like, there's an example there's a video that we showed in college planning seminar. It's about Amherst College. Google it on YouTube. It's great. But we use it because one of the main points that we give to students is like, here you have a group of admissions counselors sitting around the table, different ages, different ethnic backgrounds, different genders. They're all different. So the reason I tell them that is because you don't know what they want to hear. How are you going to speak to all those different people? You can only speak about yourself. You have to be authentic in your application, okay? So In this particular instance on this video, all of the people sitting around the table are kind of reviewing applicants for the second, maybe third time. And it's called a committee review, because they might be people that they're all trying to decide upon. They're like, oh, we want to accept the student, maybe we don't. And then if I'm a college counselor and I'm sitting at that table, my job is to advocate for that student that I want to get in. So this is my student that sent me the application. The student is in my region. So I got to go to that table and talk about, I've got a summary of like the application, summary of essays, summary of scores, activities, and I'm arguing why this student should be admitted to this college. I can't argue very well if I don't know that student very well. So the intentionality that I think has to be there in the application, meaning the students should be thinking about, this is how I want to present myself, and they should be authentic with that, and there should be no question, like when that admissions officer gets that application, they know what the student is about. And in addition to that, if they've taken advantage of like contact points, meaning when they come to the College Advisement Center and sit down and meet with our students, hopefully that student has gone there and tried to build a rapport with that admissions counselor. Maybe they've seen them later on at another college fair. So the more often they get to talk to or correspond via email with that student appropriately, not say, hey, how's your day, but with good, deep, thoughtful, research-based questions, then that admissions counselor is able to really advocate for that student to get into college. I think RIT does something where they rotate who reads their application. So if I'm an admissions counselor, maybe I'm reading for the photography or the School of Business. Next year I'm reading for the School of Engineering. So you never really know. It's a good question to ask when you're talking to admissions counselor, when you're on a college visit. Ask what's the review process like? And that will give you a better indication. So, because once you know a little bit, it kind of takes some of the nervousness out of it, because you kind of understand what's happening on the other end, and it's just, instead of just hitting submit and being like, oh, you know. So, good question.
It'll be in your mailbox in about 5 minutes, the video.
Oh, the Amherst video? Oh, one of the other points about that, the other reason I show that video is because there's some really sensational stories in it. And if you watch it, you'll know what I mean. And a lot of the times when we watch this thing, students are like, oh, you mean if I have a parent who had an affair, that means I can get into college? No. No. It is about, yeah, that was a hard thing to deal with, and all of us have difficult and challenging things to deal with. It's how you got through it. And the video doesn't explain that. The way it's edited, it just seems like, oh, this student got in. You know, that's not the case. That student's essay and application and probably recommendation letters talked about how the student coped with that situation, what it meant for them in life, so that they really got an understanding of what that student was about, okay? The other thing that is a good takeaway from that video is that it's not a science. There's nothing scientific about it. And you'll hear the Dean of Admissions say it, and he's just like, sometimes I don't know why I'm raising my hand or why I failed to raise my hand. So you'll see. So it's all the more reason to not take it personally. Was there a question?
It is.
Yeah.
I'm sure my son is going to write a meticulous application. I want to make sure of that. So do you recommend parents look at the application through the Common? Is there an option to print?
Yeah, so when you submit, when you're at the review and submit section right here, if I were done with my application, I wouldn't see all these links for the incomplete sections. What I would be able to see is a PDF of my application, so I could review it that way. I also suggested to all the students in our Common App seminar this summer, let us look at it with you. I'll go through the application, look at everything to make sure it looks good. So, yep. And finally, level of interest. And you heard about that before, and I kind of touched upon it with building a rapport with admissions counselors. Excuse me. So anyway, it's important to build that rapport, but it's also important not to overwhelm the admissions counselor. Give them updates. Talk about any awards that you might have won. Talk about any updated SAT scores, even if you sent them. Keep in touch with your admissions counselor. If you have a question based on a certain program or an application detail, ask them those questions as well. It shows that you care, it shows that you're engaged, and then that you want to do a good job in this process. Okay? All right, so I got to move on to application plans. I talked about early decision and early action already, just as a review. Early decision applications, you can only apply to one college under the early decision plan. I thought I could find a quick example right here. Anyway, so like I said, you apply early, you get your decision early, but if you get accepted, you do go to that college, all right? So you can only apply to one college under the early decision plan. Dates will vary. Some colleges have an early decision 1, like in November 1st, but they might have an early decision 2, which has the same commitment level, but just a later date. So if I don't get into my first choice under early decision 1, I might have another college, my second first choice, that I want to use for early decision 2, okay? Sometimes early decision 2 is also used for athletes, student athletes. So just keep an eye open for that. Early action, like I said, you apply early again, but you can apply to several colleges under the early action plan, and you don't have to commit to any of them until the May 1st decision deadline. You have restrictive early action, which not many colleges do. I think Notre Dame does restrictive early action, which says if I apply restrictive early action to Notre Dame, I cannot apply early decision to other private schools. Okay, so it's almost the same as early decision, but I don't have to sign that commitment. I'm just kind of saying that I really want to go there, but I don't have to sign the commitment agreement. You have regular decision, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a college, let's say they have an early action deadline of November 1st. They might have a regular decision deadline of January 2nd, okay? And that's when the college will stop taking their applications. Sometimes there's colleges that are rolling. And I always have students say, oh, I don't have to get my stuff done until next July? It's like, that's when they stop taking applications, but I doubt they'll have any seats left for you by then, let alone any kind of financial aid packages. So with rolling admissions, I'm always asking students to apply a little bit earlier than they might expect. And in addition to that, those deadlines, sometimes you'll see that colleges have other scholarship deadlines. These guys are not showing anything like that. Penn State might. So there's some other deadline information, maybe not necessarily about scholarships, but maybe something about like honors programs and things like that. But like I said about the common application, it really does give you a lot of good information in one space, okay? So you can find all your deadline information and what that means, what the application plans are, using the common application, but most importantly, go to the college's websites and research those as well so you know exactly when to get things done. And I do tell students with deadlines, let me go here. This is my dashboard of common application, and if I click application requirements, I can take a look at just a grid of all of my different deadlines, okay? So you can see right here, Syracuse has early decision 1, they have early decision 2, and then they have their regular decision or rolling deadline there. So that's 3 different application plans at one college, okay? All right, so now I'm going to hand it back over to John to talk about financial aid.
All right, financial aid is the fun part of the college admissions process, and it's the trickiest part. Accordingly, we are offering a special workshop just on financial aid. It's on September 23rd at 6:30. We'll have Samantha Veeder, who is the Vice President of Financial Aid at University of Rochester, coming to give a presentation. She will get in the weeds and tell you all about how formulas are used, how need is assessed, how financial aid awards are presented to you. So it's well worth coming if you've got an interest in that. That's right. In the big picture, there's 2 documents you need to be aware of. One is the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. All students who are requesting financial aid need to complete that document. That is what will get you eligible for government aid, student loans, and in some cases, institutional financial aid. There's another document called the College Scholarship Service Profile Form that a lot of private schools use to also determine institutional aid. So if you're applying to private schools, pay attention to see if they require the profile. in addition to the free application for federal student aid. When you complete the free application for federal student aid, you'll get something back in an email called the Student Aid Report, and that will tell you a number that says, this is how much the federal government expects your family to contribute to your son or daughter's education. You may not agree with that number, you may not like that number, but that's what the formula is telling you. This is what they're expecting you to pay for your son or daughter's education. That number will go to all the colleges that they've sent the free application to federal student aid. It'll be the same number, doesn't matter which college they apply to, the number will be exactly the same. Obviously, those colleges' costs will be the same, not be the same, and they'll come up with different ways to fill that gap or come up with those financial aid packages. But I think it's a really useful tool. As Mr. Griffin mentioned, every college has what's called a net price calculator within 2 clicks of their homepage by federal mandate. It has to be within 2 clicks of their homepage. You can fill out a bunch of information and it'll come back at you and say, if your son was admitted to our institution, this is likely what our financial aid package would look like. So you can get an idea of that even before they apply for admission. Some of them are more complex than others. Some of them require a lot more information than others. There's a nice website called My Intuition, MYINTUITION, My Intuition, that will do essentially the same thing, but in 8 questions. It's a little cleaner. It's not as accurate, but it'll give you a ballpark figure on a lot of different schools. Not many the schools have to subscribe to that service, so not all schools use it, but the ones who do, if your sons are interested in those schools, it will give you a nice estimate in a very 5-minute process. Yes?
So if you run the net price calculator and you see the projection, and you want to apply early decision, and then the package they offer doesn't match with the net price calculator, how does that work?
Yes, that's a great question. The one out clause to an early decision agreement is if the financial aid did not meet what your needs were. Financial aid not meeting what your needs were. Not what your wants were, what your needs were. So that's why I think it's important to do that net price calculator, because if it didn't match the net price calculator, then you can go back to the college and say, hey, I did the net price calculator, it told me I was going to get this, you gave me that. Well, sorry, that's all we're going to do. Then you can withdraw from the early decision agreement. Or they come back and say, oops, sorry, here's some more financial aid. So I think those net price calculators are a really useful tool, especially if you're considering applying early decision. I think it can give you a really nice ballpark of where you're going to land. I would encourage all of you, if you are going to apply early decision to an institution, to do that net price calculator before you sign the early decision agreement so that there's no big surprises come in the end. There's nothing worse than a student who gets admitted early decision to an institution and then you as a parent have to say, sorry, you can't go, right? I think it's well worth doing that ahead of time. Yes?
What if I did this a long time ago? And at the time when I was applying, we did the TAP form.
Yes.
Is that still a thing?
Yes, the TAP will be done based on the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. If you're eligible for TAP, based on the information you apply in the FAFSA, you get an automatic link to the TAP application to go from there, and that will be included in your financial aid packages. Yes, so TAP is still there.
Is that just New York State specific?
Yes, that is a New York State specific program. Tuition Assistance Program is what that stands for, TAP. Let me, yes?
Just one other question. So
Yeah.
we heard about the disastrous rollout of the FAFSA
Yes.
last year, and we've read articles about anticipating the continuous problems.
Yes.
How much of a window of time do we have to fill that out, and should we worry about it?
Well, there's the mystery question. How long will it take for the FAFSA to be ready for you to use? Typically, it's been available on October 1st. Last year, it was not available until January. It took a long time. This year, they're estimating December. So they're getting a little bit better, but they're going to try rolling it out for a small population first, trying to make corrections, and then open it up to the world. So they're estimating December. That's our best guess. Most colleges who have an early decision program that has a deadline before that will ask you to fill out the College Scholarship Service profile form that will give them the information they need to make a financial aid award for early decision students. That form will be available on October 1st.
So you can't apply till the FAFSA is done?
No, you can apply before the FAFSA is done, no question about it. They just can't send you a financial aid award unless you filled out either the profile or the FAFSA. They need those in order to send a financial aid award to you.
The FAFSA is not open right now. You can't.
No, you couldn't go and fill it out now if you felt like it. Sorry. Yes.
We're really looking forward.
Yeah, the federal government did wonders on this one. This was supposed to make life easier for everybody, and actually it is. Completing the form is a much simpler process now. With the new form, it actually links to your tax returns so that you don't have to fill out a bunch of repeat information, which makes it a lot simpler. There are fewer questions. It's just making the form work and usable for families that's been the challenge for the federal government. Yes?
Do you anticipate continuing to check until it's available, or will you all send us?
We'll send out a notice when all of a sudden we've learned, hey, it's up and available for everybody. But it's usually on the front page of the paper when that happens. And colleges will communicate with your sons also if they've applied already. They'll communicate and say, hey, we saw you're interested in applying for need-based financial aid. The FAFSA is open for you to use. On that front, I know Mr. Griffin mentioned this. When you checking to see what documents colleges have received, you can see on the common application that they've been requested or submitted. Colleges will send you a link to a portal when your sons apply. Here's a unique username and a password for your sons to log in, and they can check and see what the college has received. There'll be red X's, green check marks. That's your son's responsibility to go through that and check that regularly. Because sometimes we submitted it, we see it on our end, and the colleges somehow didn't receive it. We think it's been submitted. They don't have a record of it. Almost always, if your son walks into our office, we can pick up the phone and call and say, we submitted it on January 10th, and they'll go, oh yeah, we found it. Here it is. But please have your son stay on top of those. It's there, from a college perspective, it is your son's responsibility to make sure all those materials are there and that they have what they need. So you'll get a username and a password, and a lot of times that's also how you'll be notified of the admissions decision as well. It will come through an email, link and sign into your portal. You will find out what your decision is, what your financial aid package is. So once they get that acknowledgement, they should be checking that regularly and stay on top of that. Yes?
So our son will have 10 different portals?
Yes.
Apply to 10 different schools?
Yes.
And then, is it worthwhile having a separate email so that they're not inundated? Because, you know, initially when we started looking into colleges, we used a secondary email because we were inundated with marketing blasts every 3 days.
Yes.
What do you recommend? A second one or not?
The thing that's tricky is you have to use the same email on your common application for everything. I would recommend that that's going to be the same email that you use when you take all your standardized tests, because that's what will link them up to. So yes, if I had you all here 2 years ago, I would say yes, create an email that you use just for colleges and only use for colleges. Obviously, people are a little far along in that process right now. That may be a hard thing to undo. But students need to check their emails very regularly.
Personal email or their
whatever the one they gave on the common application is what they'll use. So it's whatever's on their common application, that's what colleges will use to communicate with. We don't require them to use one or the other. They can use whichever one they want. But that's going to be the one that colleges are communicating with regularly. Does that make sense? Any other questions about financial aid? It's my favorite topic. Yes?
Does the admission decision and the financial aid come at once, or does financial aid come later?
Great question. Some schools will tie them both together. You'll get a notification that says your decision letter is out there ready for you to see, and you click on the decision letter, and then it'll say, click here to find your financial aid award. Other schools send them out up to 2 weeks later after that, but they'll let you know that they'll be coming within a certain period of time. All right, yes?
So you mentioned negotiating financially.
Yes.
How much room is there for negotiating typically?
Depends on the institution. There are certain schools that come or don't. Here's the offer. We got plenty of kids stacked up. We don't necessarily need to negotiate with you. Here's what the offer. We got more than enough students to fill those seats. There are other schools where they want students to fill those seats. And gosh, if you've got an award for one school that says it's going to only cost you $10,000 to send your son there, and you got an award from another school that says it's going to cost you $15,000 to send your son there, you might call that school and say, hey, I got this other offer out here. I'd love to go to this place, but this offer's too good for me to pass up. that's when it's worth having those conversations.
You guys gonna have a negotiation night?
Yeah, here tips and tricks for how to do it. I think it really does depend on the institution. It's easy to throw out schools that you all know that they've got more than enough students to fill their seats. They don't need to negotiate financial aid. Where there are plenty of schools where they still need that enrollment, and they'll work with you to try to make that as affordable as they possibly can. Was there? Yes.
Just like from a 30,000 foot view.
Yes.
We've looked at a few schools this summer, and everything I can see on that campus looks more or less the same.
Mm-hmm.
Small town, same school number, same number of kids, dining hall, whatever. It all looks the same, but then these price tags are wildly different.
Yes.
And I don't mean in the SUNY system, I mean in the private system, like 20, 25,000 different
Yes.
price tags. What are some things that I don't see when I'm on campus?
That's a great question.
They have the nerve to charge.
Why would some school cost $70,000 and another school that when you walk around looks the same that's going to cost $40,000? Having worked at some of those $70,000 price tag institutions, I think what tends to be behind that is much like the experience your sons are having at McQuaid. There are more people there to help them. The thing that colleges spend the most money on is salaries and benefits. Without a doubt, that's where they spend the vast majority of their money. And so you can see when you look at schools, when the student-faculty ratio is 8 to 1, that's going to cost a lot more than a student-faculty ratio that's 17 to 1. That's usually what when you walk around, you may not be able to see the difference there. But when you're sitting in classrooms and then all of a sudden you realize that their career service center has 7 professionals instead of 2, that's usually where you can see some of those differences. Yes?
Where do I find all the scholarships?
Pardon?
Is there a certain website or a list of?
So I am your scholarship coordinator, and you will check the Naviance account. Scholarships tend to come more towards the second semester. Many scholarships. There's national, there's local, there's tons of scholarships. I'm going to be sending you information. Anytime I send anything out to the kids, I always send it to you guys because I know you're going to read it. So you'll just hear things from me. That's the best way to look for it. Also, check your college's financial aid office. Check their financial aid page. There's plenty of information on there. That's the two main ways you can find stuff.
The vast majority of students make college affordable by working with that college's financial aid office. There are some wonderful outside scholarships that can really help. There's a website that's pretty useful called FastWeb, F-A-S-T-W-E-B. It's a website, it's a college scholarship aggregator that pulls them all together. Your sons can go in and put in a profile about themselves, and you'll get a weekly email that says, here are scholarships that might be applicable to you. They tend to be national scholarships, so you're in competition with a lot of students to get them, but some of them can be really accessible to families.
One thing I do want to say, folks, is just be wary of, you should never pay money to get money.
Yes.
Okay? So there are a couple out there that are local, that they do have like a processing fee that are legit, but typically if you don't pay money to get money.
Yes.
You reapply for FAFSA every year?
Yes, you will reapply for your free application for federal student aid every year. That's what keeps you eligible. Most colleges won't change your financial aid package much every year, but you do need to fill that out every year so you're eligible for student loans, work study, any federal type of aid that you would receive. Yes?
Some of our sons were fortunate enough to get some scholarships from the school in the spring. Is there going to be anything else like that coming down the pipeline during graduation? Anything like that that we should be expecting? Or maybe some other scholarship money that's being given through the school?
This school?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
No, I think you're talking about the book awards in junior year?
Yeah.
I don't know, the RIT awards and all
Right.
that kind of stuff in junior year. Is there anything like that that?
Come senior year?
No.
Senior year?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
I
so
can't think
anything
of
that
it.
was given in junior year?
In junior year,
Okay.
yes. All right, 2 more things I want to talk about. Just standardized testing, I know a couple of you asked about it. In your booklet are all the dates and deadlines for when the SATs and ACTs are offered throughout the school year, when you need to register by. The next date I think is October 5th that's coming up, and the deadline to register is September 20th. If you are applying early decision, I would really encourage you to look at that date, October 5th. Because for a lot of schools, that might be the last test date that they'll accept before students apply early decision. And there's an ACT set of test dates and the regular ones through the fall. As Mr. Griffin mentioned, one last plug on the essay. We've been working with students all summer, actually. Students have been coming in. We've been revising their essays. It's never too late. Please encourage your sons to come see us. We will walk through from the I have no idea what I want to write about stage to the I have what I think is a finished document. Please edit this and give it back to me. So we would much rather work with your sons as they go through this to make sure that it's a document. I think, having read a bunch of them, Mr. Griffa have read a bunch of them, students are so used to writing English essays, science lab reports, history essays. They're not used to writing about themselves. And that's what colleges are asking them to do. And it's a very difficult shift for a lot of especially young men to make. It doesn't mean they need to pour their heart out, but they do need to be a little vulnerable. And I think working with us, we can really draw that out of them by asking questions and talking about some other things. Most essays that I see from students at the early stage have great ideas in them. There's really great things to work with. We just need to talk through it a little bit more, and then they come up with a terrific finished product. But it's well worth spending the time. I think some students hold off until the very last minute, and they just submit it. Even if it's the last minute, come see us. We're happy to walk through it. I mentioned the financial aid night on September 23rd. Also, just keep your eyes peeled. We'll send out an announcement about College Information Week that comes up in December again. For any of you who want to look at some of those videos, we'll do it every year. I think it's a really helpful tool. If there's one thing you leave with this evening, it is that we look forward to working with your sons individually, because every student's different. Every student's had different experiences. Every student's going to be applying to different schools and different colleges. The process will be different. So it really becomes an individual process from here on out. We are happy to work with them at any stage through this. How many of you have been through this process before with older sons? Okay. Let me just give I know, they're the veterans and then the newbies. For the veterans, let me give you one piece of friendly advice before we go. When I used to work at Hobart and William Smith, my favorite day was always arrival day, when students showed up for the first day of class. One year, there was a student standing by himself with a bunch of suitcases and nobody around him, and usually there's brothers, sisters, parents, uncles, aunts, a group. So I went over and introduced myself, and I said, is your family here? And he said, well, Mr. Young, I'm the 7th kid to go through this. They kind of dropped me at the corner and going on winery tours. Maybe they'll come back for the dean's workshop. I'm not quite sure. Please remember, for those of you who've done this before, for this son, it's the first time they're doing it. And it means we have to be patient. It means you may know things that they don't know. And we're happy to work with them all. But thank you all for coming this evening. Good luck with all this, and we'll stay in touch.